The day humanity was discovered. In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where countless species vied for dominance and glory, the discovery of humanity barely registered as a significant event. Empires spanning thousands of systems had risen and fallen over the millennia, and to them, Earth was just another unremarkable blue speck among the stars. First contact should have been a moment of great significance, but instead it was lost in a haze of conflicting stories and half-truths. The Jai insisted they were the first to encounter humanity, claiming they stumbled upon a mining vessel while prospecting in a distant system. Their account painted humans as resourceful but primitive, worth observing but not fearing. The Juvi, always eager to claim the spotlight, argued that they had established communication first, using intricate displays of light signals to gain humanity's trust. The Shimi, masters of military strategy, boasted about an encounter with a human battleship, saying their graceful formation dances earned them a rare invitation aboard. Even the Moroi, known for their aggression, claimed a victorious skirmish where they supposedly drove off a group of human ships with sheer force. In truth, none of these tales were accurate. Humanity, in its usual manner, paid little attention to these supposed first contacts. Their focus remained on their own endeavors, colonizing planets, expanding trade routes, and advancing their technologies. To the humans, the presence of alien ships in their space was an oddity, but not a priority. They had their own battles to fight, their own futures to forge, and no time to worry about visitors from the stars. This indifference baffled and infuriated the other species, who were accustomed to being treated with reverence or fear. Before long, humanity became the subject of ridicule in the galactic community. They were labeled as naive and disorganized, incapable of presenting any real threat. The Shini called them prey too stupid to flee, while the Moroi saw them as little more than potential slaves. The sight dismissed humanity as irrelevant, a fractured species too consumed by internal conflict to pose a challenge. Yet even as the galaxy laughed, humanity continued to expand, their ships appearing on the edges of distant star systems like silent explorers. The first major challenge to humanity came from the Moroi, whose conquest-driven empire saw human colonies as easy pickings. They dispatched a fleet of warships to a human system, broadcasting a message of dominance on every available frequency. The response: silence. The humans did not acknowledge the transmission, let alone react to it. Undeterred, the Moroi opened fire, targeting a human warship in orbit. Their weapons, plasma cannons capable of reducing most ships to molten debris, struck the human vessel directly. Nothing happened. The Moroi commanders were stunned. Their attack had failed to even scorch the paint. In a panic, they turned their weapons on the planet below, unleashing a barrage of destructive energy. The planetary shield absorbed every shot with effortless ease, shimmering faintly before settling back into invisibility. The humans, for their part, seemed entirely unconcerned. They carried on as if the Moroi fleet didn't exist. Confusion turned to chaos as the Moroi fleet tried to make sense of the situation. Rumors spread among their ranks that the humans were playing some cruel game, toying with them before launching a devastating counterattack. Others whispered of godlike technology, far beyond the understanding of any galactic civilization. In the end, the Moroi retreated, battered and humiliated, though the humans never fired a single shot. This story, like so many others, quickly spread through the galaxy. Each retelling added new layers of intrigue and fear. Some believed the humans possessed shield technology so advanced it bordered on magic. Others speculated they were ancient beings in disguise, testing the younger species for reasons unknown. Whatever the case, humanity was no longer a laughingstock. They were a mystery. While other species debated their next moves, humanity continued as they always had. Their colonies flourished, their ships explored, and their factions warred among themselves without pause. To the humans, these galactic skirmishes were inconsequential. They had seen war on a scale the galaxy could scarcely comprehend. To them, survival and progress were not ideals. They were necessities. Far away, in the heart of the Saranai Imperium, Emperor Sarnas XVI watched these events unfold with growing concern. His advisors dismissed humanity as an oddity, a fractured species that posed no real threat. But Sarnas was not so easily swayed. He saw the truth others refused to acknowledge. The humans were not ignoring the galaxy out of naivety or arrogance. They simply didn't see the other civilizations as relevant. They fight among themselves, Sarnas observed, and yet their borders expand. Their technology grows. They are not unified, yet they are unyielding. What will happen if they ever turn their gaze outward? Humanity's indifference was far more dangerous than aggression. It was a sign of confidence, born not of overestimation, but of experience. The galaxy had misjudged them, and Sarnas knew it was only a matter of time before others paid the price for that mistake. The stage was set, not for a war or a treaty, but for a reckoning. Humanity had been discovered. The galaxy just didn't realize yet what that truly meant. The silent threat. The defeat of the Moroy fleet sent shockwaves through the galaxy, but it was far from the only attempt to challenge humanity. The Shimi, known for their mastery of stealth and subterfuge, took a different approach. They were determined to prove that humans were not the invincible beings the rumors suggested. Instead of a direct assault, they opted for a covert operation, one that had served them well against countless other species. A fleet of Shimi scout ships, cloaked in advanced stealth technology, slipped silently into human space. Their mission was simple: infiltrate, raid, and retreat. They targeted a lush colony world on the outskirts of human-controlled space, its surface alive with the lights of bustling cities and sprawling industries. The Shimi commanders were confident. To them, this was just another raid in a long history of successful campaigns. As their ships descended towards the planet, they prepared to fire. But the moment their weapons activated, the colony's shield flickered to life. The barrier was unlike anything the Shimi had encountered before, an impenetrable dome that shimmered faintly as it absorbed every ounce of energy directed at it. The Shimi fleet's weapons were rendered useless, their plasma bolts and railgun rounds disintegrating harmlessly against the invisible wall. Before they could retreat, disaster struck. The shield, sensing an external threat, emitted a pulse of energy. It was not an attack. It was simply a recalibration, but it was enough to disrupt the Shimi cloaking fields. The once invisible ships now hung in the air, fully exposed. Confusion erupted among the Shimi crew as human satellites locked onto their position. The Shimi commanders panicked. They expected retaliation, a counterattack that would obliterate their fleet. But nothing came. Human authorities on the planet seemed entirely unbothered by the incident, treating it as little more than a system anomaly. The Shimi ships fled, battered and humiliated, their raid an unmitigated disaster. Back on their homeworld, Shimi leadership struggled to comprehend what had happened. Their greatest strength, stealth, had been rendered useless. Worse, the humans didn't even seem to notice their presence. This wasn't just a defeat, it was an insult, and the galaxy was watching. As stories of humanity's invulnerability spread, the galactic narrative began to shift. What was once seen as disorganization and weakness was now viewed as a calculated indifference. The humans weren't arrogant. They simply didn't see the rest of the galaxy as a threat. This realization sent chills through the halls of power in every major empire. The Saranai Imperium, led by the ever-watchful Emperor Sarnas XVI, was the first to see the true danger. For centuries, the Saranai had been a cautious and calculating people, avoiding unnecessary conflict and expanding their influence through diplomacy and trade. But humanity posed a dilemma unlike any they had faced before. They were not conquerors, yet their expansion was relentless. They were not diplomats, yet their influence grew with every system they colonized. They are not like us, Sarnas observed during a council meeting. Their power does not come from unity or tradition. It comes from chaos. They fight among themselves, yet they are stronger for it. Their constant conflict forces them to innovate, to adapt, to evolve. And now that strength is spilling into the galaxy. His advisors were skeptical. They are fractured, one argued. They have no central authority, no fleet large enough to challenge even our weakest systems. They don't need one, Sarnas replied. Their strength is not in numbers, but in their resilience. Their technology alone makes them untouchable. We cannot fight them. We must find another way. Sarnas had no intention of leading his people into a hopeless war. Instead, he devised a plan to approach humanity directly, not with threats, but with an offer. It was a bold strategy, one that went against the norms of galactic diplomacy. To approach humanity as equals would be seen as weakness by other empires. But Sarnas understood something they did not. Humanity's indifference was not permanent. One day, they would turn their attention outward, and when that day came, the galaxy would tremble. Meanwhile, humanity remained blissfully unaware of the growing tension. Their colonies expanded, their trade routes flourished, and their factions continued to squabble. To them, the galaxy was a backdrop to their own struggles, a distant stage on which they had no desire to perform. They had no central government, no unified military, and no grand vision of conquest. And yet, they thrived. Reports of human ships venturing into alien territories became increasingly common. These vessels, small and unarmed, moved with a confidence that baffled the other species. When confronted, they would simply apologize and leave, as if their presence was a minor inconvenience rather than a potential act of aggression. But to those who paid closer attention, the truth was clear. Humanity's ships were not unarmed. They simply didn't need weapons. Their shields, powered by technologies no other species could replicate, made them effectively invincible. Even the most advanced fleets in the galaxy could do little more than watch as human vessels moved through their space, unchallenged and unbothered. As the Saranai prepared to make their move, other empires debated their next steps. The Moroy and Shimi called for retaliation, desperate to restore their damaged pride. The Juhi in sight advocated caution, unwilling to provoke a species they didn't fully understand. But no one could ignore the growing shadow of humanity. For now, humanity remained focused on its own affairs, but the galaxy knew it was only a matter of time before they turned their gaze outward. And when they did, nothing would ever be the same. A dangerous proposal. The Saranai fleet drifted into the edges of human space with a deliberate slowness, its gleaming vessels a stark contrast to the utilitarian design of human starships. Emperor Sarnas XVI sat in the command chair aboard the Solace, his personal cruiser. The ship was stripped of its usual extravagance. There were no banners, no gilded adornments, only the cold steel of necessity. It was a gesture of humility, one he hoped the humans would appreciate. This mission was unlike any other in the history of the Saranai Imperium, a diplomatic outreach to a species no one truly understood. For 5 human years, the galaxy had observed humanity's rise with a mix of fascination and dread. What began as a curiosity had evolved into a phenomenon. Every attempt to challenge humanity had ended in failure, yet humanity showed no signs of aggression or retaliation. To Emperor Sarnas, this restraint was the most unnerving aspect of all. A species capable of such immense technological feats, yet utterly uninterested in conquest, was an enigma he could not ignore. The Solace and its escort of smaller ships glided into the human-controlled system, where a massive orbital station loomed. It was not the polished, symmetrical structure one might expect from an advanced civilization. Instead, it looked almost haphazard, an amalgamation of modules, docking bays, and antennae that had grown organically over time. It was alive with activity, ships of varying sizes coming and going, each carrying the distinct markings of different human factions. "Emperor, we've established contact with their station," the communications officer announced. "They've acknowledged our presence and are granting us permission to dock." Sarnas nodded. "Proceed." As the Saranai ships approached the station, The atmosphere on the Solace grew tense. The crew was accustomed to displays of power, to entering systems with weapons primed, fleets flanking them in formation. This silent approach, under the terms of another species, was unsettling. But Sarnas remained composed. He had spent countless hours studying humanity, poring over reports and fragmented transmissions. If there was one thing he understood, it was that humans valued sincerity over pomp. The docking process was uneventful, though the sight of heavily armed human soldiers awaiting them on the other side of the airlock sent a ripple of unease through the Saranai delegation. The humans were clad in practical uniforms, their weapons sleek and efficient. They didn't exude hostility, but their presence was a clear reminder of who controlled the station. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped forward, his piercing gaze fixed on the Emperor. "Welcome to Atlantis Station. I'm Admiral Navarro Quinn. What can we do for you?" Sarnas inclined his head slightly. "Admiral Quinn, I am Emperor Sarnas, the 16th of the Saranai Imperium. I come not to issue demands or ultimatums, but to extend a hand of cooperation." The Admiral raised an eyebrow. "Cooperation? That's a rare word in this part of the galaxy. I'm listening." The Saranai delegation was escorted to a conference room, its walls lined with holographic displays of star maps and tactical data. Sarnas couldn't help but notice the subtle differences in human technology, less polished than Saranai designs, but undeniably effective. The humans had mastered the art of function over form, a trait that reflected their pragmatic approach to survival. Once seated, Sarnas began. "Admiral, I'll be direct. Your people have become a focal point of galactic attention. Your technology, your resilience, it has unsettled many of the great empires. Some see you as a threat, others as an anomaly. I see you as an opportunity." The Admiral leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "An opportunity for what exactly?" "To rewrite the rules of the galaxy," Sarnas replied. "For centuries, the galaxy has been dominated by a cycle of conquest and subjugation. Empires rise and fall, but nothing truly changes. Your people have already proven that you don't fit into this cycle. You've thrived without unification, without the need for conquest. You've challenged the status quo simply by existing." Quinn studied the Emperor for a moment before responding. "And you think we're interested in changing the galaxy?" "I think you already are," Sarnas said. "Your expansion, your technology. It's inevitable that you will become a major power, but the path you take to get there matters. The Saranai Imperium has no interest in war with your people. On the contrary, we wish to align ourselves with you. Together, we could shape a future free from the endless conflicts that have plagued the galaxy." The Admiral folded his arms. "You make a good pitch, Emperor, but you're asking a lot from a species you don't really know. We're not unified. As you've probably noticed, every faction has its own agenda, its own priorities. Getting us to agree on anything is like herding cats." Sarnas allowed himself a faint smile. "And yet, your factions share certain values. Freedom, resilience, ingenuity. Those are qualities that resonate with the Saranai. We may be different, but we are not so dissimilar." Quinn leaned forward, his tone softening. "You're not wrong. But aligning with us means taking a risk. The galaxy won't like it. You'll make enemies." "We already have enemies," Sarnas said. "The question is whether we face them alone or with allies." The room fell silent as the two leaders regarded each other. It was a moment of quiet understanding, a recognition of the precarious balance they both sought to maintain. For all their differences, they shared a common goal: survival in a galaxy that thrived on chaos. Finally, Quinn stood. "I can't make promises on behalf of all humanity, but I can take this proposal to my superiors. If nothing else, it's a conversation worth having." Sarnas rose as well. "That is all I ask." "Thank you, Admiral." As the Saranai delegation returned to their ship, Sarnas felt a flicker of hope. It was a small step, but it was a step nonetheless. The galaxy may not have been ready for what humanity represented, but Sarnas was determined to be. For better or worse, The Saranai Imperium had taken the first step toward an uncertain future, one shaped by the silent threat of humanity and the unyielding determination of those who sought to understand them. The First Alliance. The return to Saranai space was quiet but charged with anticipation. Emperor Sarnas XVI had taken the boldest step in his reign, opening a dialogue with a species the galaxy barely understood. While his advisors bickered and debated the merits of the proposal, Sarnas remained resolute. Humanity was not a fleeting anomaly. They were a force that would shape the galaxy's destiny, and the Saranai would not be caught unprepared. The proposal made by Admiral Navarro Quinn was relayed to human factions across their territories. It wasn't an easy process. Humans were as fragmented as ever, their diverse factions disagreeing on everything from trade policies to territorial claims. Yet when it came to the prospect of an alliance, curiosity prevailed. For once, there was a rare consensus among them. The Saranai were worth hearing out. The first official meeting between human representatives and Saranai envoys took place on neutral ground, a barren moon orbiting a gas giant, its surface transformed into a temporary diplomatic hub. Massive domed structures were erected to house the delegations, their interiors brimming with advanced monitoring systems designed to prevent any hint of treachery. The human contingent was as eclectic as one might expect. Admirals, corporate executives, scientists, and even independent representatives from smaller colonies arrived, each wearing the distinct attire of their respective factions. Their variety was striking to the Saranai, whose delegation arrived in identical uniforms, each member trained to act with precision and unity. The contrast was undeniable, but it set the stage for what was to come. When the meeting began, the room buzzed with restrained tension. Emperor Sarnas stood at the center, his imposing figure a beacon of calm amidst the whirlwind of human debate. He addressed the gathered crowd, his voice steady and deliberate. "Representatives of humanity," he began, "you may wonder why we, an empire with centuries of tradition, would seek an alliance with your people. The answer is simple: survival. The galaxy is watching you, and what it sees, it does not understand. Your resilience, your independence, your ability to thrive despite fragmentation. These qualities make you a threat to the established order." He paused, letting his words settle over the room. "But where others see a threat," he continued, "I see an opportunity. Together, we can forge a path that breaks the cycle of endless conflict. A partnership between our peoples could redefine what it means to exist in this galaxy." The humans listened intently, their expressions ranging from cautious interest to outright skepticism. After a moment of silence, Admiral Quinn, who had been chosen as the primary human speaker, stepped forward. "We appreciate your honesty, Emperor," Quinn said, "and I think most of us here can agree that the galaxy could use a shake-up. But let's not pretend this is purely altruistic. You want something from us, just as we want something from you. So let's get to it. What's the deal?" Sarnas allowed himself a faint smile. He respected the humans' directness. The Saranai Imperium seeks mutual protection and shared knowledge. Your shield technology is unparalleled, as is your capacity for innovation. In return, we offer you access to our trade networks, resources, and the collective wisdom of our people. Quinn nodded. "And what about the rest of the galaxy?" "They won't take this lying down. You're asking us to make enemies." "You already have enemies," Sarnas replied. "The Moroi, the Shimi, and countless others have tested your defenses. They will not stop, with or without us. You will face their hostility. The question is whether you face it alone." A murmur rippled through the human delegation. The truth of the Emperor's words was undeniable. Humanity had already become a target, their shield technology and relentless expansion seen as a challenge to the established powers. Yet, aligning with the Saranai carried risks of its own. It would place humanity in direct opposition to other empires, forcing them into the galactic spotlight they had so carefully avoided. As the discussions continued, it became clear that humanity was not a monolith. Some factions, particularly the trade guilds, saw immense potential in a partnership with the Saranai. Access to their resources and trade routes could accelerate human expansion and solidify their presence in the galaxy. Others, like the militant frontier colonies, were wary. They had spent decades fighting off external threats and trusted no one, not even their fellow humans. The debate grew heated, with voices rising and tempers flaring. Yet, amidst the chaos, a common thread began to emerge. Despite their differences, humanity shared a desire for survival and autonomy. They understood the risks, but they also saw the potential rewards. After hours of negotiation, Admiral Quinn stood once more. "Here's the deal," he said, his voice firm. "We'll enter into a provisional alliance with the Saranai Imperium. Shared technology, joint defense, and open trade. But this alliance isn't about submission. It's about partnership. We stand as equals, or not at all." Sarnas inclined his head. Agreed. The room fell silent. It was a moment of historic significance, a tentative bridge between two civilizations that could not be more different. For humanity, it was a chance to solidify their place in the galaxy. For the Saranai, it was a gamble on a species they barely understood. As the delegates began drafting the terms of the alliance, the galaxy continued to turn. Far beyond the barren moon, other empires watched with growing unease. The humans and the Saranai, two unlikely partners, had taken the first steps toward a future that would challenge everything the galaxy had known. But alliances, like trust, are fragile things, and while the foundation had been laid, the true test was yet to come. The storm approaches. The ink was barely dry on the alliance agreement when the first ripples of dissent began to spread across the galaxy. The news of a formal partnership between the Saranai Imperium and humanity sent shockwaves through the established powers. What had once been seen as a curiosity, humanity's resilience and enigmatic shield technology, was now perceived as a direct threat to the status quo. The galaxy's most powerful empires knew that this alliance could disrupt the delicate balance of power, and they would not stand idly by. The Moroi, still nursing their wounded pride from their disastrous first encounter with humanity, were the first to act. They began rallying their allies, calling for a coalition to contain the growing human menace. Their rhetoric was filled with accusations of human aggression and expansionism, though their true motivation was clear: revenge. Other empires, such as the Shimi and Juhi, were more cautious. They recognized the danger humanity posed, but were wary of engaging with a species whose full capabilities remained a mystery. Meanwhile, back in human space, the new alliance was already being put to the test. A joint task force of Saranai and human ships was formed to patrol the borders of their respective territories, a symbolic gesture meant to showcase their newfound unity. It was a challenging endeavor. The two fleets were starkly different. Saranai ships were elegant and streamlined, while human vessels were rugged and utilitarian. The crews struggled to communicate at first, their cultures and protocols clashing in unexpected ways. Despite the difficulties, progress was made. The human crews quickly adapted to the Saranai's more rigid structure, while the Saranai began to appreciate the humans' improvisational approach. Admiral Navarro Quinn, who had been appointed as the human representative in the alliance, worked closely with Emperor Sarnas to foster cooperation. The two leaders shared a mutual respect, though neither underestimated the challenges ahead. Their first true test came sooner than expected. A Moroy-led coalition, consisting of over a dozen allied species, launched a surprise incursion into human space. Their fleet was massive, hundreds of warships bristling with weaponry, each one designed to overwhelm and annihilate. The coalition's strategy was simple: overwhelm humanity before they could fully integrate with the Saranai. By striking quickly and decisively, they hoped to crush the alliance before it could gain traction. The attack began on the fringes of human-controlled space, targeting a cluster of mining colonies in the Epsilon Theta system. These colonies were lightly defended, their shields sufficient to repel minor skirmishes, but not a full-scale invasion. The coalition fleet descended upon the system like a storm, their weapons lighting up the void as they began bombarding the colonies. The humans responded with their usual resilience. Local defense forces scrambled to reinforce the colonies, their ships engaging the enemy with reckless determination. But it was clear they were outmatched. The coalition's numbers were overwhelming, and the human defenders were slowly being pushed back. Messages of distress were sent across the system, and the Saranai received the call. Within hours, the Joint Task Force was mobilized. Saranai warships and human fleets converged on the Epsilon Theta system, their combined forces determined to repel the invaders. As the Allied fleet arrived, the Moroy coalition found themselves caught off guard. They had expected humanity to stand alone, not to have the support of the Saranai Imperium. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Saranai ships, with their precise formations and advanced weaponry, worked in perfect harmony with the chaotic but effective human tactics. Human ships, equipped with their near-impenetrable shields, absorbed devastating attacks while returning fire with brutal efficiency. The coalition, for all its numbers, struggled to adapt to the unexpected synergy of their opponents. Admiral Quinn and Emperor Sarnas coordinated the battle from the bridge of the Solace, issuing orders with a calm determination that inspired their crews. Focus fire on their carriers, Quinn instructed. Without their fighter support, they'll crumble. Sarnas nodded. Agreed. Deploy our interceptors to cover your cruisers. Their plasma cannons are vulnerable to swarm tactics. As the battle raged on, the tide began to turn. The coalition's strategy, which relied on overwhelming force, faltered against the combined might of the alliance. Human ingenuity and Saranai precision proved to be an unstoppable combination. One by one, the coalition's ships fell, their commanders retreating in disarray as their fleets were shattered. When the dust settled, the Epsilon Theta system was secure. The alliance had achieved its first major victory, and the galaxy took notice. For the first time, humanity and the Saranai had demonstrated their strength, not as separate entities, but as a unified force. The victory, however, came at a cost. Several human colonies had suffered significant damage, and the joint fleet had lost a number of ships in the battle. But the message was clear. Humanity and the Saranai were no longer passive observers in the galaxy's affairs. They were players in a game that had long been dominated by others, and they intended to win. As the Allied fleet regrouped and began repairs, Admiral Quinn and Emperor Sarnas convened to discuss their next steps. This was only the beginning, Sarnas said, his expression grim. The Moroy and their allies will not stop here. They will regroup, and next time, they will be more prepared. Quinn nodded. Then we need to be ready. This alliance isn't just about defense anymore. It's about survival. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. The storm had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The rising tide, the victory at Epsilon Theta, sent ripples of unease throughout the galaxy. Empires that once viewed humanity as a disjointed anomaly now saw them as something far more dangerous, a catalyst for change. The alliance between the Saranai Imperium and humanity had proven its strength, and that strength was growing. The Moroy-led coalition had been humiliated, and though their leaders vowed retaliation, their forces were weakened, their morale shaken. But the galaxy would not wait for the alliance to consolidate its gains. The Moroy and their allies began rallying once more, this time employing more cautious and insidious tactics. They knew they couldn't win in a direct confrontation, so they turned to subterfuge, propaganda, and sabotage, hoping to fracture the tenuous unity between humanity and the Saranai. Meanwhile, within the alliance itself, tensions were beginning to surface. While the victory had demonstrated the potential of their partnership, it also highlighted their differences. The Saranai valued precision, hierarchy, and order, while humans thrived on flexibility, improvisation, and independent thinking. These contrasting approaches led to friction among their joint military and political leadership. Admiral Navarro Quinn, now a key figure in the alliance, found himself caught in the middle of these disputes. He spent hours mediating arguments between human commanders who wanted to pursue aggressive expansions and Saranai generals who advocated caution. "We're not just fighting a war," Quinn reminded them. "We're building something new. That means compromise, not division." Emperor Sarnis, too, faced resistance within his own court. Many of his advisors believed the humans were unpredictable and untrustworthy, and they urged the emperor to limit the scope of their cooperation. Sarnis, however, remained steadfast. He had seen firsthand what humanity was capable of, and he understood the value of their unique perspective. "They are not like us," he told his advisors, "but that is why they are our greatest strength." Despite the challenges, the alliance pressed forward. A joint initiative was launched to integrate their technologies, focusing on combining Saranai precision with humanity's unrivaled shield systems. The result was a new class of starship, the Vanguard, equipped with advanced Saranai targeting systems and human-built shields capable of withstanding even the most powerful galactic weapons. It was a symbol of their cooperation, and it inspired hope among their respective populations. But as the Vanguard and other joint projects took shape, the galaxy's enemies began to strike from the shadows. Sabotage became a common threat. Shipyards were bombed, communication relays were hacked, and supply lines were disrupted. The Moroi coalition flooded neutral systems with propaganda, painting humanity as reckless invaders who threatened galactic stability. They whispered lies into the ears of wavering factions, hoping to isolate the alliance and turn public opinion against them. The most devastating attack came when a critical trade hub near the Saranai border was targeted. A coalition-aligned splinter group, disguised as independent traders, detonated a massive bomb inside the station's main docking ring. Hundreds of lives were lost, and trade in the region ground to a halt. The attack fueled distrust between human and Saranai leadership, as both sides quietly suspected the other of failing to secure the station. Admiral Quinn and Emperor Sarnis knew that their enemies were exploiting these tensions. In a private meeting aboard the Solace, they discussed their next move. "They're trying to divide us," Sarnis said. "If we give in to suspicion, we've already lost." Quinn nodded. "Agreed, but we can't just react to their attacks. We need to take the fight to them. Show the galaxy that we're not afraid to defend what we've built." The two leaders devised a bold plan. Intelligence reports indicated that the coalition was using a hidden base in the Zinar Nebula as a staging ground for their sabotage operations. It was heavily fortified, protected by the natural electromagnetic storms of the nebula and a fleet of warships. Taking the base would require a coordinated strike, combining the best of human and Saranai forces. The operation, codenamed Rising Tide, was launched within weeks. A fleet of Vanguard ships led the charge, supported by human strike teams and Saranai tactical units. The mission was fraught with danger. Navigating the nebula's storms was a challenge even for the most advanced ships, and the coalition fleet was well prepared. The battle that unfolded was a testament to the Alliance's growing strength. Human pilots, accustomed to unpredictable conditions, maneuvered their ships through the nebula's chaotic environment with remarkable skill. Saranai gunners, using their precision targeting systems, dismantled the coalition fleet with deadly efficiency. Together, they overwhelmed the enemy's defenses and breached the base. On the ground, human commandos and Saranai warriors stormed the facility, fighting side by side in the tight, twisting corridors. The coalition forces, caught off guard by the sheer ferocity of the attack, crumbled under the pressure. Within hours, the base was secured, and the coalition's sabotage network was dismantled. The victory was a turning point. It not only disrupted the coalition's operations, but also strengthened the bond between humanity and the Saranai. Soldiers and civilians alike began to see the alliance not as a fragile experiment, but as a true partnership. The battle at Zinar Nebula became a symbol of what they could achieve together. Yet even as the alliance celebrated, Emperor Sarnis and Admiral Quinn knew the war was far from over. The Moroi coalition was wounded, but it was not defeated. And while the alliance had grown stronger, so too had the determination of their enemies. The rising tide of conflict was far from abating. If anything, it was only growing stronger. The turning point. The Alliance's victory at the Sinar Nebula sent a resounding message to the galaxy. Humanity and the Saranai Imperium were a force to be reckoned with. Their success had dealt a significant blow to the Moroy-led coalition, disrupting its sabotage operations and shaking the confidence of its members. But the galaxy, vast and unpredictable, was not easily cowed. The coalition quickly regrouped, consolidating their remaining forces and devising a new strategy, one that would test the alliance to its limits. The coalition's leaders, desperate to reclaim their dominance, knew they needed to strike at the heart of the alliance. Intelligence suggested a target that, if destroyed, could cripple the fledgling partnership. Forge Station, a massive orbital facility on the edge of Saranai space. The station was the center of the Alliance's joint research and development efforts, home to the newly built Vanguard fleet and countless technological projects. Destroying it would be more than a tactical victory. It would be a symbol of the Alliance's vulnerability. The attack came without warning. The coalition deployed an enormous fleet, bolstered by mercenaries and rogue factions, eager for a chance to dismantle the Alliance. Their ships emerged from hyperspace in tight formations, their weapons already charging. The defenders at Forge Station scrambled to respond, but they were outnumbered and unprepared for the sheer scale of the assault. Within minutes, the station was under heavy fire. The coalition's bombardment breached its outer defenses, causing widespread damage to its docks and power grids. The station's shields held for as long as they could, but the strain was too great. Sections of the station began to collapse, sending debris spiraling into space. Thousands of lives were at risk, and the Alliance's leadership knew they had no time to waste. Admiral Navarro Quinn and Emperor Sarnas immediately mobilized their forces. A combined fleet of human and Saranai ships was dispatched to reinforce Forge Station, led by the Solace and a newly commissioned Vanguard-class flagship, the Resolute. The fleet's arrival was a dramatic sight. Hundreds of ships emerging from hyperspace in perfect synchronization, their weapons primed and their crews ready for battle. The battle for Forge Station was unlike any engagement the galaxy had seen before. The coalition's forces fought with desperation, their leaders determined to destroy the station at any cost. The Alliance's fleet responded with a ferocity born of necessity. Human ships, equipped with their unmatched shield technology, drew enemy fire while Saranai vessels delivered precise and devastating counterattacks. The Vanguard fleet, a true testament to their combined innovation, moved as a single cohesive unit, cutting through the enemy lines like a blade. Admiral Quinn directed the battle from the bridge of the Resolute, his voice calm but commanding as he coordinated the defense. "Protect the station at all costs," he ordered. "Focus on their carriers and capital ships. Take out their heavy hitters first." Sarnas, aboard the Solace, provided strategic oversight, his centuries of experience guiding his fleet's maneuvers. "Deploy interceptors to their flanks," he instructed. "Cut off their escape routes. We cannot allow them to regroup." Despite their efforts, the battle was grueling. The coalition's forces fought with relentless determination, their attacks inflicting heavy losses on the Alliance's fleet. Ships on both sides were destroyed in fiery explosions, their debris littering the battlefield. Forge Station, battered and burning, hung on the brink of collapse. Then, in the battle's darkest hour, humanity's ingenuity tipped the scales. A group of human engineers aboard Forge Station, working under impossible conditions, devised a plan to temporarily reroute the station's failing power grid. Their goal was to reignite the station's defensive turrets and shields, giving the Alliance fleet the breathing room it desperately needed. As the engineers raced against time, the coalition fleet intensified its assault, sensing the Alliance's vulnerability. Admiral Quinn, realizing the station needed more time, made a bold decision. All ships, "Form a defensive perimeter around Forge Station," he commanded. "We hold the line, no matter the cost." Human and Saranai ships moved into position, creating a living shield around the station. The Coalition's firepower was overwhelming, but the Alliance held firm. Every captain, every crew member, understood the stakes. Forge Station wasn't just a symbol of their partnership, it was a promise of what they could achieve together. Finally, the engineers succeeded. The station's defensive systems roared back to life, its turrets unleashing a storm of energy that tore through the Coalition fleet. The station's shields flickered, then surged, absorbing the enemy's attacks with renewed strength. The tide of battle shifted. With the station secure, the Alliance fleet launched a coordinated counteroffensive. The Vanguard ships spearheaded the assault, their advanced weaponry cutting through the Coalition's remaining forces. One by one, the enemy ships fell, their formations breaking as panic set in. The Coalition, realizing the battle was lost, began to retreat. The Alliance did not pursue. Their priority was saving Forge Station and ensuring its survival. As the battlefield fell silent, the true extent of the damage became clear. The station was heavily scarred, its outer layers torn apart, but it was still standing. And so was the Alliance. In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Coalition had thrown everything they had at the Alliance and failed. Forge Station, battered but unbroken, became a symbol of their resilience. The humans and Saranai had not only survived, they had proven they could overcome anything the galaxy threw at them. Admiral Quinn and Emperor Sarnas stood together on the bridge of the Resolute, overlooking the battlefield. "This was a turning point," Sarnas said, his voice heavy with both relief and determination. "The galaxy knows now that we are not to be underestimated." Quinn nodded. "They'll come at us again, but we'll be ready. This alliance isn't just about survival anymore. It's about shaping the future." As the Alliance regrouped and began to rebuild, one thing was clear. They had passed their greatest test yet. The tide of war was turning, and for the first time, the galaxy began to understand the true strength of unity.